Minnesota politics has been rocked by a major announcement. Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat and former U.S. vice presidential candidate, has ended his bid for a third term in office, stepping aside as controversy and political pressure mount across the state. Walz made the decision just months after launching his re-election campaign, saying the growing storm around alleged fraud in state and federal programs had made it impossible to govern effectively while also running for office. In a statement, he said the constant political battles were pulling his focus away from protecting Minnesotans and addressing real problems on the ground.
I think we have shown that in many categories we rank at or near the very top in quality of life. But I think the focus in all of those races is that we have to bring down the cost of life for many people. And that means things like childcare, it means things like housing, and it certainly means things like food and the food insecurity issue that we saw. And again, I don't know, for what it's worth, my pro tip to the president would be is don't hold Great Gatsby parties on the night before you're going to punish people for being hungry. It is not a sin to be poor. I think we need to recognize that people who will start screaming mandates, you don't give a mandate, you get elected by the people. Now you need to go out and do things to make life more affordable, to address the issues that they care about. So obviously, from my perspective, it was a good night, not just for Democrats, it was a good night for the country, that the checks and balances, and I've always said this, the final check and balances is always the people. And last night there was a pretty strong check. I'm under no illusion that this president will understand that he was repudiated about as strongly as any president ever has in a non-full midterm, but that's what happened.
He insisted he has not been accused of wrongdoing, but acknowledged that the controversy has damaged public trust and fueled partisan attacks. Republican critics have tied Walz and state Democrats to a sweeping federal investigation into alleged misuse of pandemic-era aid programs, including the high-profile Feeding Our Future case.
I spoke in the fall about the iceberg I saw ahead. Something's fraud that's much larger than what's been visible to the public. When I said that, it wasn't hyperbole or rhetoric, it was a warning. And today I want to talk and I want to show here a sense of what that iceberg looks like, because I think people deserve to know what that is and how big this problem is, because we can't solve the problem until we grapple with the size of it. So the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services pulled the claims data for these 14 programs dating back to 2018. And those 14 programs in Minnesota have cost $18 billion since 2018, and more than $3.5 billion in 2024 alone. So that's a sense of the magnitude of the problem. These are the 14 Medicaid programs, which is just a part of Medicaid, these waivered services that have been flagged as having issues with program integrity and fraud. Now, I'm sure everyone is wondering how much of this $18 billion was fraud. It's not the $1 million question, that's the $18 billion question. The answer is far too much, and the task ahead of all of us is not only figuring out how much of that money was fraud, because we know a significant amount was, but figuring out how to put an end to the fraud in our state and get control of it. So let me end with this before I take questions. The magnitude of the fraud in Minnesota cannot be overstated. It's staggering amounts of money that have been lost.
The issue has taken on national overtones. President Donald Trump has repeatedly highlighted the investigations, at times singling out Minnesota's Somali community, a move Walz strongly condemned.
From Minnesota and from the United States. It's actually more from the United States because Minnesota puts in, and we're not going to pay it anymore. We're going to have Walz go pay. We're not going to pay them, and we're not going to pay California, and we're not going to pay Illinois with that big slob of a governor that they have that doesn't want, we brought down crime by 25%. He didn't do anything. He's not doing anything. But they want us to leave. He had a day where they had 17 murders not too long ago. 17 murders and 77 people shot. But 17 died. And then he talks about, we can handle it. He can't handle it. But we pull back, and we'll go in at the appropriate time. But we're the ones that brought the crime down. We brought it down 20%. They didn't bring it down. Pritzker didn't bring it down. Same thing with Gavin Newsom.
Adding fuel to the controversy, a bizarre Craigslist advertisement recently went viral. The now-deleted post appeared to seek child actors to temporarily fill a Minneapolis daycare during a government inspection, allegedly to make the center appear operational. Screenshots of the ad spread rapidly online, intensifying scrutiny of Minnesota's childcare system and raising fresh questions about oversight and accountability. Despite the turmoil, Minnesota Democrats remain confident about holding the governor's office. But Walz's exit dramatically reshapes the race. His decision clears the way for a crowded Democratic primary, with names like Senator Amy Klobuchar, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Secretary of State Steve Simon now being floated as potential contenders.
I just returned from the FCC Oversight Committee hearing with Chairman Brendan Carr. So there's a lot of things we need to do for America when it comes to the FCC right now. A better universal service fund, more on broadband, figure out the spectrum auction. I wish I could ask those questions, but instead, because of his conduct over the last year, I focused on free speech. And I specifically asked him, is it okay to use your position, Chairman Carr? Is it okay to use your position to threaten companies just based on freedom of speech? Even if you don't like that speech, if you're a liberal and you don't like that speech, if you're a conservative and you don't like that speech, but people have the right to say their views. And in fact, I asked him, how come that the FCC under your and President Trump's leadership has launched an investigation of every major news network except Fox? Those are the facts. He couldn't really seem to answer it. He didn't really seem to know. That's hard for me to believe. So I will continue to stand up for free speech, and I will continue to stand up for your right to know what's going on with this administration.
So what actually happened is Donald Trump used reconciliation to pass an ugly bill, and now is trying to, I don't know, pass it, get a rubber stamp to extend it into the future. This is wrong. It's unfair. It obviously will impose devastating cuts. And what I really hope is that it wakes people up to what's going on in our nation right now. That when Donald Trump was inaugurated and had those billionaires sitting right behind him, that he was sending a signal to everybody in the United States is that is who he was going to rule in favor of. This bill that he passed this summer shows it. And the moment we're in right now, when Americans and Minnesotans are facing devastating cuts to their health care, shows it even clearer. We know what they're doing. The question is, how are we going to respond? And I hope what we do is we lift up our voices and we say no. We demand, we insist that we fund health care, the Affordable Care Act subsidy, and also the Medicaid cuts be restored. And that Republicans come back to the table and that we pass a bill that has some level of compassion and concern for the most vulnerable people. So defend the Affordable Care Act, stop the illegal and unfair cuts to funding healthcare programs, and restore clinical public health research dollars. And let's do it right away. Thank you.